All of that, all of that. I'm good with all of that. And sorry, my laptop is literally on my lap. Is that going to be a problem if I'm like wobbly and stuff?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
So add character, right? It'll be like, oh, it's this laptop's on his lap, and his lap is so jiggly and floppy.
Hey guys, welcome to Inside Comics with George Michail. Really quick, if you like this kind of content, subscribe and tell a friend about it. Today, my guest is writer Greg Wright. Thank you so much for being on the show, Greg.
Hello, thank you very much, George. I'm happy to be here.
And I wanted to talk to you about selling comic books because you are one of the best salesmen I've ever seen on the convention floor.
Thank you. That's
You're,
very kind.
you're, yeah, you kill it. And I was wondering if you had any tips for how to sell a book.
Okay, how to sell a book? I mean, I don't know. Like, I usually kind of just have somebody sort of like if people ask me, I'm like, come by and see what I do, and just like I'm happy to have people there. I guess if I were to try to distill it, I would say get comfortable meeting people and get comfortable with sort of like the crushing existential weight of a lot of rejection, because that's just the way that most things are. Like, most things are a no rather than a yes, and you just got to get you don't know what it is. It's a magic number. You got to get so many no's in order to get to that yes, and there's no good way of doing it, because I think with time I've gotten a little more rubbery in terms of how I bounce back. It used to take like a rejection, be like, oh, that really stings, and I gotta sit down for a second and collect my thoughts and be like, did you see that guy? He's such a blah, 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 or whatever. And now it's kind of like, okay, it's a no from you. I'm going to talk to this person right now, and just sort of shortening that time, because like the whole time you're on the floor is time that you can be selling. And so if you're not selling, like, you want to get to the point of selling something. I don't know. Maybe all of this sounds obvious. I don't know. I think it's good to meet people, be genuinely excited about what it is that you have to say, what it is you have to sell, and get it so that you're comfortable saying it, even if it's like, man, your breath smells bad and I don't want to talk to you, and your kid's peeing on my table, or something like that. I've never had a kid pee on the table. I don't recommend it. Don't bring urinating children. Cons. That's also a hot tip.
Yeah, I think the enthusiasm thing is really keen because I think when people are at a convention and they're looking to buy a comic book, they want to feel a connection and they want to feel that you're passionate about your project too.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when I do a show, I stand up a lot. I always like to try and look at people in the eye
Mm-hmm.
and talk to them and and really kind of convey that I like making comic books and that I think they'll like my book.
Yeah, you have to sort of be your own best hype person, because nobody's going to work harder at selling your thing than you are. So yeah, you want to be on your feet. I like to be in front of the table if they allow it at the Comic-Con, so that there's literally no barrier between me and them. And like you're saying, eye contact, shaking hands, which I guess I don't even know. I don't know if it's legal to shake hands anymore. It's living in weird times with this pandemic. Also, I'm glad to be doing this via video chat, because I had a bunch of onions with my dinner and I smell terrible myself. So, um, but it's good to get out there and just meet people and hear what they're excited about too. Like, because that gives you a really good indication of like, who is this crowd? What do they like? What are they into? And every now and then you kind of find a new angle for your own stuff that's like, oh, maybe people who like this other thing too. So it's kind of like you're doing these experiments to sort of see who likes what, and then how to talk to them about it. So
And you also so you create horror books too, and I create horror books. We've actually been at shows together, and it's been hard for me because I'll be like, "Hey, you want to hear about my monster book?" And they're like, "I already got a monster book." I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
crap." but
sorry. there's
but
there's room for both. I love Cover of Darkness. I like that you've got, again, like I've got monster stuff and you've got monster stuff. We both are sort of doing like classic monsters. There's mummies, there's vampires, and there's werewolves and things like that. But that said, it's like, I mean, whoever heard of somebody who's like, oh, like, hey, do you want to see this action movie? It's, well, no, I've already seen an action movie. I mean, there's, it's sort of like people are funny when they make excuses about stuff where it's like, I already bought a thing, I can't buy more things. It's like, no, you do that every day. You can go ahead and do that. Um, yeah, and I think it's a lot of fun to see what else people got out there and how do they sort of approach things similarly or differently. Yeah, I get pretty excited about a lot of things, and I get kind of manic.
What do you like about writing horror?
What do I like about it? I like that there's always at least a couple levels that it's working on, because on the surface level, there's like here's, I don't know, a giant spider or something like that, or here's an alien or whatever, and it's like, but there's also sort of like this other level of like, what is it you're really scared of? I think most people are scared of dying, but I think people are also scared of losing loved ones. People are scared that how stable is their mental health, because really, like, if you think about it, horror is all sort of in some ways about mental health. Now this is, bear with me because it's a little weird, because it's like the rules of reality don't operate in the same way. It's like nightmare logic in a lot of horror, and it sort of lets you have this window into what would happen if I were, if reality didn't conform to what I thought it was. And sometimes that happens, like, oh, well, who's crazy? Well, Jason Voorhees is crazy and he's doing this crazy stuff. But I think more than that, like any horror movie, it's like, or not horror movie, any horror story or any horror fiction is kind of like, what if you weren't perceiving the world as you normally know it? Because all horror kind of breaks those rules. And I have fun breaking the rules, and I have fun also sort of working on that metaphorical level. Like, what's this really about? Like the movie Alien, for instance, a lot of people say like this is about anxiety about childbirth or HIV or something like that. And I don't know that we get to necessarily know what all our metaphors are before we put it out in the world. But when people sort of respond to it and they're like, this is really about this other thing, it's like that can be really exciting. Now I know that all fiction on some level works that way, but something about horror gets to the root of what it is that we're afraid of and helps us sort of confront it and survive it in a safe fictional setting. If
Yeah,
that
it's we oftentimes we take our characters and you might think of it as like a character arc, but with horror, it's really like they've got this wound, and through these traumatic experiences, they're able to overcome their like inner turmoil and their inner problems and change through all these like terrible things happening with monsters.
yeah, and I like that that narrative has built into that kind of, like, you're talking about sort of a redemption or a change or a metamorphosis. Again, that's in most stories, but it's more overt in horror. But it always makes me think, like, I mean, because the narrative has its own logic and rules to it, where like, if like a serial killer story, like if you're the sixth person with, I don't know, blonde hair that's getting murdered or whatever, you've got to overcome the obstacles and things like that. Like, that's great, but like, how terrible would it be to be the first person? And it's like, I didn't know this was happening. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah. No, no, poor first guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or the
They
first
always talk
person to
about
die in any horror movie, they were just like going to camp or fishing or whatever, and then I'm dead. It's like, well, I guess I wasn't the hero of the story after all.
yes, we talk a lot about the final girl. We don't talk a lot about the first girl.
Yeah, we don't talk about the first victim. The first victim is usually just doing something. We don't mind if the first victim is also kind of like a horrible person. I watched Army of the Dead this weekend, and I was so rooting for the one guard to die, and it didn't disappoint. I don't think that's spoiling anything for anybody. Where it's like, usually if somebody's like saying sexist stuff or racist stuff or is bullying people, you're like, oh, you're probably gonna die. And I also kind of like that moral aspect to horror too, where it's like, even if it's saying like, oh, drugs or alcohol or premarital sex or whatever it is they're railing against, I kind of like that there's an order to this, where it's like, oh, you did this thing and now you're going to get punished for it.
Like
Because
the
in my
rules
own
and like
life, I'm often wondering, what am I being punished for? What did I do wrong that I suffer?
um okay, so we have you have Monstrous
Mhm.
with the Baba Yaga, and can you tell me, is there what's coming around the corner for Monstrous?
Okay,
What's next?
sure. Yeah, Monstrous is a series of stories that are all set in Frankenstein's Europe and have steam-powered robots fighting classic monsters, like I had talked about before. You know, Igor's there doing tech support on brains in jars. There's witches, there's vampires, and the good people are not all that good. The bad people are not all that bad. Everybody's a little bit monstrous. That's the basic idea for it. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. I recently did a comic called Claim that's based on a game from Deepwater Games. It's kind of like a fantasy romp. Monstrous. I just finished off with a an arc called Monstrous Heartbreak and Blood Loss, which is all sort of like not necessarily love stories, but there's some element of of tragedy or heartbreak, or there's a lot of them, like a couple of them have romance in them. And I've also got in Monstrous, the mummies are going to be getting a story called The Book of the Dead, which is going to be drawn by Shehan. I'm excited about that too. I think I've talked. I'm not sure. I'm sure I've mentioned something somewhere before, but I want to give you the exclusive here that the final issue of Monstrous Heartbreak and Blood Loss. It was originally going to be a standalone story just called Monstrous Heartbreak and Blood Loss as this one shot. And I liked that title enough, I applied it to the other issues as well. And it tells the story of a balding academic guy with glasses who's chubby and has a beard and looks a lot like me. And his ill-fated romance with a vampire woman with a character who looks very much like an ex of mine. So there's some metaphors going on there. It's a very personal story. That sounds terrible. It sounds like I'm like a bad guy, but it's not. It's sort of like the ways in which you kind of have to live and let live, or let the undead be undead, or whatever. That if things don't work out, the best thing is to sort of just move on to other things. And yeah, so I would highly recommend that. I don't know. I might have to go to court for this. I don't know. I hope not. And you'd mentioned Tabloid. I have a new novel as well. It's about a mother-daughter team of paranormal investigative journalists that they report on Nostradamus's picks for this year's Oscars and things like that. And they have to save each other. They have to save the tabloid, fight cryptids, save the world, that kind of thing. And it's the first in a series. So the next one is in production, hopefully coming out later this year, depending on things. And I'm really excited because it's getting distributed by Simon & Schuster. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know that it's going to change my life, but it can't be a bad thing, I figure.
That's amazing, dude.
A lot of verbal diarrhea there.
Oh, so yeah, Tabloids. And is this your first novel now?
This is it's the first published novel. I've written a bunch of crap that nobody needs to see, but this is crap people can see. But yeah, it's first novel, and it's a series. I'd like to keep telling these stories as long as I can. I've got ideas for tons of stuff. They work at it's the year 2000. They work at the last of the supermarket tabloids that reports on things like Bat Boy and Sasquatch and alien abductions and things like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've published some short stories before, but this is sort of the first novel that's come out here. I'm a late bloomer, I guess.
It's exciting. All right. So, Greg, I want to thank you for being on the show, and I hope to see you on the convention circuit.
I hope we get it back and we get to cross paths again. Thank you so much, George. I'm really appreciative and really grateful that you took the time to talk with me. And hopefully, folks can check out some of this cool stuff.